anymore, because so many people have gone to academics. The people who have the skills to fix things, there aren't that many people out there.
No.
So they command big-time salaries anymore.
Well, just like back about 10 years ago, I mean, the colleges were just cranking out attorneys, you know. And the problem is there were so many attorneys out there that they didn't make any money. I had a couple friends that were attorneys, and they were starving to death. They just weren't making enough, and that's because, you know, they got brainwashed when they got into high school, and then they went to college, and hey, become attorney, you know, and you know, and then they became attorney and found out, hey, you know, they're not going to have a high, you know, income type of job. So, you know, again, I blame a lot of that on the schools. I mean, I have had 8 kids from my marriage, and I look.
Wow.
That's what I say a lot of times. But I look at a couple of them who graduated from school and, you know, made us proud. Then I had a couple of them, you know, as soon as they hit 16, they say, I'm not going to school anymore. You call the police, and the police say, hey, he's 16. You can't make him go to school. You know?
That's right.
You know, then you sit there, and then, you know, if they're, I hate to say it, as long as I'm alive, I'm going to be supplementing them because, you know, they don't have the education, the skill, the skill sets, which is very important. He doesn't have it. Unfortunately, even some of the kids that go to school and graduate don't have it.
That's true. Very true.
Well, I think the books you wrote, I think, is needed. I think parents need to really get more into, you know, especially if you have a student that is not doing good at school. You know, I think the parent needs to get involved with their activities at school, get them into activities, you know, maybe pick up your book and get ideas to evaluate what's going on, maybe with their student or their child, I should say, or maybe the school or the teacher or what have you.
Well, any parent out there listening or anybody, any therapist who's working with clients, I suggest that you do a little survey, and the survey goes like this. On a scale of 1 to 10, your purpose in life, how would you rate it? 1 to 5, 1 to 10. Do you have a purpose in life? And if they rated a 2 or 3, you know you got a problem.
Oh yeah.
With this person, okay? Then I would go to caring. How do people care about you on a scale of 1 to 10? Do people care about you as a person? And if they rate that 3 to 4, that kid's got a problem, okay? If they have a lot of caring people, you know, that need is met. Then when you come to control, I would say, how when it comes to control, do you feel like you're in control of your life? On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate it? Okay? If they rated a 3 or 4, ooh. And then you come to happiness. How happy are you with your life? Rated on a scale of 1 to 10. If they rate that a 3 or 4, ooh. And then you go to the last one. How stressful is your life? Are you fearful about what's happening to you? Well, how would you rate that? So you get a profile of your kids. And if your kids' scores on those 1 to 10 are below 5, your kid's in trouble. I've got one kid in trouble. My kid, my youngest kid, is in trouble. I know, because I've done this. He's not happy. He's not in control. He has no purpose. And the only person who cares about him is me. Thank goodness he knows that. But my kid's in trouble. If you're a therapist out there listening, just use that simple technique on the 5 basic needs and have your client rate them on 1 to 10. If you're a parent, talk to your kids. If you're an employer and you have an employee that you're having trouble with, ask them those 5 simple questions and find out what the problem is. Because when a person's needs are not being met, they have to do something to get them met. You take this guy who shot the people at this restaurant in Tennessee. His needs were not being met. He walks in half clothed, half naked. He's not happy. He's not in control. He has no purpose in life. And he believes nobody cares about him. What's he going to do? He grabs a gun. With a gun, put your finger on that trigger. You've got control.
And power.
You've got power. You've got purpose. And shooters throughout school systems, once, your needs aren't being met, you have to do something to get them met. And you can do this in many ways, and unfortunately, shooters is one of the ways. Now, committing suicide is another way, because I'll show them, I'll kill myself. I got purpose. I'm in control. I'm going to do what I want to do. Those, kind of thing. Alcohol gives you temporary control. Drugs give you temporary control. Gangs are so prevalent in the United States. Why? You got a kid who thinks people don't care about them, who has no control, who has no purpose, who's not happy. You join a gang. What do you get?
They think they're getting love. That's what they think.
Yeah, they think. But they do have control in that gang. The gang controls them and controls their environment. And the gang members care about each other. They have a purpose. The gang has a purpose. And there are moments of happiness within that gang. And your fear of your life, the gang protects you. I don't know, Gary. I don't know what I can do to change what's going on in our society, but I'm trying.
I think it has to start 2 places. One, I think it needs to start at home. That the parents need to get involved more with their children, especially if they have a child who's not doing good at school. Then that parent needs to go to school and find out what's going on with the either the teachers or the school, and try at least voice, and show, that they care, because a lot of parents don't do that. They don't. They go to work, their kid goes to school, and if they come back home, and even if they have somewhat passing grades, the parents are somewhat happy. But the thing is, if a student's in a class and he's not learning anything, and he's not emotionally stable, it's just going to get worse. And it's going to really, when they get when they hit their 30s and 40s, you're going to see it. They're not going to be able to hold a job. They're not going to be able to stay married. Their suicide rate is high, and their crime rate is really high. I can tell that. I tell you that with experience in my family. I mean, if you have a child that has failed through school, got out of school, can't hold a job down because he can't get a good job, then they start getting a little bit into crime, and then they can't get a job at all because now they have a misdemeanor or a felony against them, and their life is pretty much, I hate to say it, it's not going to go very far anywhere.
And, there are parents like you and me out there all over the United States whose kids are not doing as well as we would like them to do. And there is nothing more miserable in all my life than to deal with one of my kids who is not succeeding. It's just awful.
Well, can I be honest with you? How about if you had 8 kids and you have like 2 or 3 that way, and they're adults, and can't support themselves.
I feel for you, Gary.
I had a child, one of my sons, I'm not going to go into it too far, but again, he had problems at school. He had problems with teachers. He had a problem a little bit with drugs. But they kept passing him till he finally, said, hey, I'm not going to go to school anymore. And that was it. But he was 30 years old or near 30. And I said, look, I love you. And he had a problem with drinking and all this stuff. I finally said, look, I can't deal with it anymore. I'm getting close to your age. And I just said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to move in with one of your friends or something. I can't deal with it anymore. And I feel horrible. But, it all goes back to when they were in school. And that's, again, part of it, that was maybe my fault. I think probably some of it was the school district's fault. I'll be honest with you. I had one child, that I didn't know it at the time, but I had a neighbor who was growing marijuana. Now, this is back in the 80s, late 80s. He was growing a mass amount of marijuana. Well, evidently my son found out about it and stole his marijuana, which amounted to a garbage trash bag, 30-gallon size, full of marijuana.
Wow.
He takes it to school, puts it in his locker. One of the janitors walks by and notices the smell. The next thing you know, I get the phone call, right, from the police and the superintendent and the principal of the school district. I go meet with them, right? You know what their concern was? They were scared it was going to get into the newspaper that this kid had a trash bag full of pot at school. So, instead of, doing anything where, incarcerating him or putting him into a youth center or counseling or anything, they banned him from the school district. That was it.
Yeah, they were fearing for their own reputation and not caring for the kid.
No, not zero for the kid. They were worried about themselves because they would look bad to other parents. Yeah. And to the state and probably whoever, where they get their funding.
That's one of the main themes throughout my two books is self-serving versus servant leadership. If you're an educator or a parent, your role in life is to serve. And it's unfortunate that too many educators come across as self-serving and are self-serving as opposed to there to serve the needs of the kids. And so your kids' needs were not being met there. Being a parent, I used to write letters to my teachers when I was a school superintendent. I said, may the joys of being a parent are superseded by the happiness you receive versus the problems your kids are going to create. And it wasn't exactly the wording like that, but being a parent is very difficult. There is nothing that can make you happier than seeing your kids succeed. There is nothing that can hurt you more than having your kids create problems, having your kids fail.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel your pain, Gary. I know exactly. I've got one kid that is 40-some years old, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
It's hard. I mean, it tore me apart to have to go up to my son and say, I want you to move out. I still have a couple other, I have a daughter and two other sons still living here. They all hold jobs down. They all contribute. They help clean the house. They do this. This one didn't want to do anything. And I just got to a point. I put him through rehab a couple of times. That's expensive, but that's not the point. The point is, I feel when he went to school, I think the school failed him, the concerts failed him, and maybe I failed him. Hey, our time is up. I would like to, invite you back on for, like a 2-hour show or an hour show and really get into your book, and So maybe if you're interested, maybe like in about 3 weeks, I can have